2025 to order at 3:02 p.m. Welcome to the work session of the Waco City Council. Welcome to all the people gathered here in the Bosque Theater Gallery in beautiful downtown Waco today. Great crowd here today. It looks like it's nearly full. You all can move to the front if you like. There's some seats up here. Anyway, welcome to all the viewers at home. Welcome watching on the Waco City Cable Channel, and thank you for joining us here today in our proceedings. I'm Mayor Jim Holmes. I'm joined on the dais here today by our council members, Isabel Lozano from District 2 over there, Josh Bordery, District 3, Darius Ewing, District 4, and George Chase, District 5. Our Mayor Pro Tem Andre Bearfield is not with us today. I'm also joined on the adjacent dais over there by senior city staff, City Manager Bradley Ford, City Attorney Kristen Hamilton, and City Secretary Michelle Hicks. And welcome back, Michelle Hicks, after an absence. Good to have you back. Let's give Michelle. We will start the meeting today with a moment of silence. The first item of business today is recognition of work session speakers. Is there anyone present in the crowd here today who would like to speak on a work session agenda item? Do we have anybody, City Secretary Hicks? Maybe?
No, Mayor.
We do not. We do not, so we will, no requests to speak. We'll now recess the regular session and convene into work session with a report from City Manager Ford.
Thank you, Mayor, and welcome to the council and public watching. Want to say welcome back from summer break. We've, as you noticed in the packet, it's quite a long agenda. Thanks to our summer break, we take July off for council and come back to work ready to go. I don't have any changes on the agenda today, but I would like to start off with a few employee recognitions as well as a couple of introductions. First, if you've noticed, there's a giant pipe in the room and 16 inches. But I want to acknowledge our public works and infrastructure teams for a moment. In July, just a couple weeks ago, we experienced a couple of large breaks in our water and wastewater systems. And these teams really hustled to isolate the issues as well as restore services to affected areas. So what you see up front here is one of the broken sections that we brought in. It's a water main, failed in close proximity to the Brazos River. And through coordination with the Corps of Engineers, we were able to facilitate the lowering of Lake Brazos or the Brazos River. And staff, as you see in the picture, worked in a pit of about 20 feet deep next to the railroad, next to the river, to resolve this issue. And the repair is nearly complete, and I just wanted to bring up the team that worked on it. I'm real proud of them. A lot of ingenuity and get it done attitude. And particularly, they may see it as routine business, but I see it as something worth celebrating. They went out in a difficult location, used their ingenuity, used the parts they had, used the labor they had, and did it all in-house, saving our residents and ratepayers hundreds of thousands of dollars, no doubt. So Cody, if you don't mind, and Charles, y'all come up and bring the team up. Let's introduce them, and I'd love to get a picture with the council behind this pipe.
Let's get up there, guys.
Yeah, Cody, why don't you introduce them from the podium, and let's get the team up with the council by the
Y'all
pipe.
go up there. Yeah, work. All right, City Manager Ford, thank you. Mayor and Council, thank y'all. I'm here with Charles Lease, Infrastructure Services Director.
Yeah, y'all get close. It's 9 feet long. Surely we can fit everybody in there.
Yeah, climb inside it, that would be good.
We don't need
All right, everybody ready? 1, 2, 3.
Cody, do you mind introducing the team?
Yeah, so up here, we have Dana Johnson, our superintendent over the water team. Jose Moreno, our assistant superintendent, Rick Lawyer is a supervisor. We have Matt Weigel and Jacob Mitchell. They worked really hard and over weekends, overnights to get this issue fixed in coordination with Charles Lease's group, Infrastructure Services, to work with the Army Corps of Engineers to get that lake level lowered so we could safely get there, as well as some technical support as well. So we wouldn't be in this position without those guys up here. I appreciate all they've done and how they did it very safely as well. Thank you.
All right, next up, we got a few new staff introductions, council. I want to start with, actually still in the Department of Public Works, we've got a new assistant director to welcome. Name is Irvin Padiera. Irvin, where are we? There he is, sorry, you're blocked from my view. Irvin's starting over as our Assistant Director in Public Works just in the last couple weeks, overseeing our Streets Division, our Utilities Division, as well as Public Works Maintenance Division, supporting all sorts of improvements to our infrastructure, as well as community partnerships. He's got about 2 decades of experience, is very experienced in both Public Works and Utilities, started his career as an electrician, worked in a leadership role in working for cities as well as water authorities out in California. We're going to work on that. It's okay. We've got some good Californians that have come to Texas, got some good role models for that. In 2016, he earned his bachelor's degree, Cal State, and continued his career. Relocated to Texas in 2020 and has been working for the Trinity River Authority since then. Real excited for him to be here. He was raised on a dairy in Oregon. We've got some dairies around here in Texas. Enjoys hiking and fishing. I think he'll make a great addition to our team. If you don't mind, welcome Irvin as our Assistant Director of Public Works. That Streets Division has a lot of resources to get deployed and a lot of work to do over the next decades. So your work is cut out for you. Next intro I wanted to do is for our new controller in the Financial Services Department. She's new to the city, but not to Waco. It's Ann Wiswall. Ann, do you mind? Ann's a double bear. She's got a bachelor's degree and master's degree from Baylor and has been living in Waco for a little while, serving over at Pilgrim's Pride in an accounting role. We're excited for her to be here. She's a certified CPA. She grew up in Waco and familiar, obviously, with our history. As a young girl, she used to bicycle to the zoo. I know we got our zoo team here, loves the zoo. It was actually when it was at the airport, so I bet she likes it even more now in its current location. Attended Waco High, actually was the valedictorian at Waco High. So Waco High producing some great talent that's now sitting here in the city of Waco serving our residents, and looking forward to serving with you, and thank you for being here. And last but certainly not least, we've got some familiar faces in the room from Waco Fire that have just recently been promoted. Of course, our new chief went through a process to select his deputy chiefs, and he's made the announcement just recently that Max Burries and Philip Burnett can be stepping into those deputy chief roles. Max is going to be over emergency services. Max has been with us for 28 years. Veteran in many positions. He served this department very well. He initiated the first officer candidate school in our department's history, as well as served as chief of emergency operations, interim chief, and serves on our rescue task force and modernized our inventory systems. Max is a recipient of our fire department's Community Service and Career Achievement Award, and I'm excited to serve with you, Max. I've heard great things from folks that are working with you and around you, so congrats on this new role. If you don't mind standing up real quick so people get an eye on you. And then, of course, Philip Burnett has over 20 years in our department, serving as firefighter, engineer, lieutenant, and captain most recently. He's been leading as captain over training and logistics, and has coordinated substantially with me and people in my office when he was in the role of president of the local association. So Philip was the guy sitting across the table from me and others as we negotiate bargaining agreements. And he always has done that in good faith and with great communication. I'm real proud to see him here in the room today getting this promotion. I do want to note he's a two-time recipient of the Jimmy Fox Firefighter of the Year Award with our department, which is no small thing. 2 times in 20 years to be recognized with that. And excited, Philip, for you to take on the role of Deputy Chief over Administration and Planning. Congrats. All right, council, I'm going to do a quick manager's report summary of your agenda today. We do have 44 resolutions on your agenda. I'm going to highlight just a couple of them for you. The first one's Resolution 523, authorizes the purchase of an adoption and rescue transport trailer for the Animal Services Department. This trailer will allow for animals to be safely housed in a climate-controlled environment and transported, as well as with viewing windows, so they'll be able to see out, have a comfortable experience during adoption events. Currently, our staff is only able to transport 2 to 3 animals at a time, and the trailer will give us the option to transport 22 animals at a time, which is going to be very helpful as we try and get our adoption numbers up. I wanted to make a point here. Our staff at the animal shelters doing a great job, but their work is really cut out for them. Since September of 2021, coming up on 4 years now straight, we've been operating above our capacities, above our design capacity at the shelter for adult dogs. That places a significant strain on the staff and the animals. So I'm excited to bring this trailer as an option to increase our adoptions. Obviously, that's a nationwide trend in terms of what shelters are going through, but very proud of our staff trying to manage through this situation. They've retained our live exit rate 92% or higher each month, but we need the community's help to get adoptions going. And so thanks, council, for your support of this item and this trailer. Next one I wanted to highlight is Resolution 527, authorizes the purchase of 126 self-contained breathing apparatus systems, the SCBA systems that our firefighters rely upon to safely enter buildings and structures that have fire going on and smoke, obviously. We are replacing this. It's quite a cost, $1.7 million, but we're replacing a 10-year-old set of SCBA systems, which allows the firefighters to operate in really hazardous environments, and it isolates toxins from them. It's very helpful, obviously. As the National Fire Protection Standards have changed over the last decade, there is a need for us to make this move so we ensure that we're still compliant with those NFPA standards. Obviously, this is a core piece of what keeps our firefighters safe and has my strong recommendation for your approval. Resolution 540 is the last one I wanted to highlight, I believe, today. Authorizes an application to TCEQ for an amendment to our water right certification of adjudication for Smith Bend Ranch to add a diversion point along Lake Brazos. All that to say, you might remember that we bought some water rights back in 2022. Some of the members were on the council at that point. Real strategic acquisition of water rights on the Brazos River, pretty far upriver at Smith Bend. The water rights we purchased are 1921 water rights. They were actually the 57th oldest water rights in the Brazos River, which gives us great priority standing when water rights get called. We're moving the take point on the red dot way upriver down to the yellow star. That will allow us to access the water rights we purchased closer into town and allow us to obviously move forward towards our integrated water resources plan, which calls for council familiar accessing Brazos River rights to ensure we don't have a shortfall of water in our 100-year planning horizon. All right, let's see, I had one more.
City Manager Ford, I really appreciate that move. I think that's a very strategic move. I think this council and your office has been incredibly forward-thinking on both water supply, looking ahead, and also water quality. And I think some of the agenda items here today reflect that. So I'm grateful to our city staff for making this happen. Water is our most precious resource, and I think Wacoans understand that we know that, and we're looking ahead, decades ahead, to ensure its continued flow.
Definitely.
Holmes here, I'll echo Councilmember Border there. Yeah, there's a lot of resolutions that are tangentially kind of related to water today, but that one in particular, 3 years ago, when we bought those water rights, these are like 1928, I think. They're prioritized by year, so buying them was a little bit of a leap for us on council, but in hindsight, it was one of the best investments we've ever made. It really gives us, the city, a little more flexibility with water and a little more comfort with water supply, and then having this intake location kind of move makes it look even more, makes me look smart from 3 years ago. I'm not sure what happened after that, but anyway, it was a good move. A couple other ones, but just rate studies on water. I mean, we're talking about other water-related stuff, but also happy to see that the firefighters are getting improved equipment and quite a few pieces of equipment there. And again, public safety is always number one for us. So we like to see a strong firefighting unit and a strong police unit. And good to see the promotions there within the fire department there too. Good folks. And welcome. I didn't get a chance yet. Welcome to Team Waco. And we strive for best-in-class services here. And happy to have you be part of that effort. Appreciate it.
I think the 9-foot pipe in front of us is a prime example of the best-in-class service we strive to provide here in town. So, yeah, welcome to Team Waco. And I did want to just highlight that one more time because it is not an easy thing when you have hundreds and thousands of people depending on us and our staff and the folks that worked tirelessly to get this done so that they can have water when they turn on the tap. And when these main breaks happen, especially when we have them happen like we've had recently, it's really difficult to have the entire process run smoothly. And our guys did a fantastic job. I got no calls or emails about disconnects, about water tasting funny or smelling funny. People were able to continue their usage, and it's all thanks to the teams we had working on this day and night. I can't get over you guys getting this in here really and onto the stage. I don't know how that happened, but I did not want to move on from this without highlighting that one last time.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. I know it means a lot to the team, and it really shows, Waco's in a unique position. A lot of cities of our size don't have a zoo, don't have an airport, don't have a convention center, don't even treat or make their own water. And we sit as a full-service city. And it takes a great team like those that were in the audience to make that happen. So real proud of them. Thanks you for those comments. I did want to back up. I had one more item I wanted to highlight. And this is for Councilmember Borderud mainly. We're going to cover it on Public Hearing 497. We're actually considering the change of the name of the section of 42nd Street nearest to Waco High. Changing 42nd Street to Lions Way in honor of the new Waco High. We're going to wait to implement on this after your action. We're going to wait till around homecoming. At the request of the school district, they'd like to kind of have a party out there around homecoming and kind of unveil the new street signs. And so appreciate the leadership that y'all have shown to change that, and looking forward to implementing that around October.
I'm just proud to share the dais with Waco High Lion, proud alum, I think class of 1999, George Chase, up here.
Unfortunately, it was 88.
Okay, all right, my bad.
I was also not the valedictorian.
Mayor, that's the last update I had for the council today. So I'll take any questions y'all have at this time.
Any questions for City Manager Ford on the agenda today? There being none, we'll move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes Resolution 2025-503 through Resolution 2025-546, 43 of them today. Are there any other items the council would like to remove from this consent agenda as presented? There are no affidavits of substantial interest today, so we're going to vote on all of them. It includes all those 2025-503 through 546. The next item on the agenda is work session items 2025-485 through 489. City Manager Ford, would you please introduce the first work session?
Thanks, Mayor. I will. 485 is a discussion of our third quarter financial report. I'm inviting Colin Booth up. He's our Managing Director of Finance. He's going to presenting our results. This is from October 1 through June 30th. Before he begins, I'd really like to give him a thank you. He's joined by Blue Koslitz, our CFO, Assistant City Manager. But I want to give a thank you to Colin and the finance team. You know, earlier this year, we kind of set a goal to get these quarterly reports done faster from quarterly close and get them in your hands more quickly. And I'm pleased to report, we're 34 days post-close reporting to y'all today, and really appreciative of Colin and the team for making that happen. It's the fastest it's been done since I've been here, since 2017, and I think it was really important for us to get it to you before our budget presentation, which follows. So Colin, thank you to you and your team. I look forward to the presentation.
Thank you, City Manager Ford. Really appreciate those comments, and really appreciate my team that's in the Finance Department, the Fiscal Management Services Department, and the Office of Management and Budget. They do outstanding work. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Again, my name is Colin Booth, the Managing Director of Finance. It's a pleasure to be here. So this is the third quarter financial report, and we're going to cover 10 funds. Our largest fund is the general fund. We're going to cover our major enterprise funds, some of our minor enterprise funds, as well as the street maintenance fee fund. So I will jump into the general fund. This is the general fund by category. These are revenues and expenses through June 30th, and this is 75% of the year has gone by. So that's kind of our benchmark that we use and look at these numbers at this time, although some of our revenues and expenses vary as they're collected during the months of the fiscal year. So jumping into the general fund, I'll circle back to property taxes in a later slide, but just wanted to highlight some of the numbers here on the revenues. We've had charges for services in the general fund. Those have exceeded budget through June 30th by $350,000 or 135%, so that's positive news there. Intergovernmental revenues have also exceeded budget. Those are our generally our payments that we receive from other governments, as well as mostly grant funds that we get in. That's at 105% of budget. And that is offset by 63% collections in fines and fees and 77% collections in licenses and permits. Overall, our total revenue budget for the general fund is $217.6 million. We've collected $178.2 million, so that's good for 82% of collections throughout the year. When you look at expenses by category, generally what I like to zone in on are our salaries and wages and employee benefits. Those are at 73% and 72% respectively, so just under that 75% benchmark. Those are our largest categories of expenses other than the transfers out that you see down below. Contracts with others is a little bit higher. It's at 105%. And so our total expenses for the general fund are $154.74 million. That's 69% of budget. I do want to mention one thing about transfers out. You'll see on that line it's at 53% of budget. We have a large annual one-time transfer out to cash CIP funds. Those are in these funds here, the general fund and the water, wastewater, and some of these other funds that you're going to see. That's a one-time cash transfer out for CIP projects. That has not been processed yet, and it will be processed in July. So you'll see on the transfers out, generally that's lagging lower than the 75%. So that's one of my main comments you'll see throughout this presentation. If you look at the next slide, slide 4, these are our revenues by department. And what we try to do in the general fund is if we have a cost center or a department that we can assign the revenues to, we will tag that and associate it with that particular department that's primarily responsible for the collection of that revenue as well as the service provision of that service. Undefined is the largest revenue source. Those are revenues that are not defined to any particular department. Those are going to be primarily property taxes and sales tax collections. The budget is $211.1 million. The year-to-date collections are $172.395 million. That's good for 82% of collections there. Couple of department revenues that have exceeded budget. Animal services is at 140% of revenue budget through June 30th, as well as fire services is at 246% of budget there. That's offset by lower collections in the police services budget and then the library and cultural enrichment budget. But again, total revenues for the quarter are at 82% of collections for the general fund. When we look at slide 5, we've got the general fund expenses by department. Most of these are on track. I did just want to point out a couple of departments here on this slide. Contributions, which are going to be those monthly transfers out, as well as that annual transfer out, that's at 43% of budget. Those are going to include your transfers out to your funds for like street maintenance, the Parks Performance Fund, the Vehicle and Equipment Replacement Funds. So that is at 58% of budget there. The miscellaneous department includes our contingencies, some special services accounts with regards to contract services, and then our sales tax rebate. That's miscellaneous department is at 43% of budget. On slide 6, I kind of just wanted to drill into some of the specific points from the numbers I mentioned earlier. So our building permit revenue is at $1.4 million of collections. That's good for 82.7% of budget. Our miscellaneous revenue, it says rebates there. That's primarily from our purchasing card rebates. As we spend money utilizing our purchasing cards, we get a rebate back that's similar to a credit card type rebate. So we are at $449,000 there. We're above budget due to the one-time rebate that we get, and then we actually had a correction from a prior year that was posted in this year. That's offset by lower than anticipated collections for cable TV franchise fees. I would assume that people are continuing to switch over to streaming services and things like that, so the cable TV franchise collections are lower than anticipated. The inspections on the expense side, and again, these are expenses including encumbrances, but as we've gone through June 30th, we only have 3 more months left of the fiscal year, so our encumbrances are less than they were at the beginning of the fiscal year. But when we drill into some of these accounts, a couple I wanted to highlight. So the special services account for inspections, that's your contract expenses for inspections. That spent or encumbered $147,000 due to third-party inspections. Our contract account for our payments to the McLennan Central Appraisal District for our appraisals, that's over budget by $293,000. That's a set amount that we pay per year based on the number, the distribution that we receive of their budget from the appraisal district. So that one is higher than budget. When we drill into property tax revenues, a couple of columns I want to highlight on here. The FY25 budgeted amount at the bottom is $90.5 million. Our actual collections for property tax year to date are $89,267,713. This is off pace, and it's one thing that we're looking at on a monthly basis. And so you can see how we're off pace, the difference between our monthly budgeted collections and actual budgeted collections by $515,000. I don't know if we're going to catch up back to this number, but we are going to look at it. But we are running out of months in the fiscal year. So if we do a flatline projection, meeting the budget for July, August, and September, we're going to project out to $89,984,523. So we're going to be watching this one monthly, but for right now, it looks like it's trending lower than budget. When we switch,
Colin, I had a quick
Yes,
question on before we get on to the other, on general.
yes, sir.
And specifically back one, where we go to that 2020, no, go back to the other one. No, the forward on the tax layout.
Yes, sir.
Look at that middle column, 2025 budgeted, where you've got the total to 90,500.
Yes,
I was trying to get the aberration back on. Now flip to, first of all, count up the year-to-date there is roughly 80-some million in 2025 budgeted. And go back to the first page of the budget.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, right. Just a second, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Where you go to property taxes,
Yes,
monthly budget, 2025 year-to-date, we're only showing 68.8, which seems low.
68.8.
Yeah.
On the monthly budget. Yes, sir. So 68,797,500 is simply just 91,730,000 divided by 9, which is the 9 months in the fiscal year. Excuse me, divided by 12.
We didn't put any more science into it than that, other, because you collect,
That is correct. It's just a simple, yes, sir, it's just a simple straight line projection. It's the monthly amount multiplied by the number of months.
so as we
of-
do
of the
that,
fiscal
I thought we'd gotten to the point where we were looking at that curve and putting in the collection.
I have
All right,
not specifically on that, but we can take a look at that, Mayor, and look at adding that in on that monthly
because we
budget
collected all
variance
in
and
January, February, March.
doing
Because
some.
The other thing
That
shows.
is, that is correct. We, on property taxes specifically, and I'll flip over to the slide, to your point, we get a majority of those December, January, and February. And so to your point, it's not weighted on that previous slide, but that's something that we can take a look at for sure.
Got it. Just going back to the other one, great layout. Man, I love the color coding. You can see what our actual is. You can see what last year's was, what our budget is, and to me, everything is here. It looks great. So
Absolutely.
congratulations on putting a great report together. And also congrats on the 30-day close, did we say? Or was it shorter than that?
To get
30
this
I mean,
turned around. Thank
There's a lot of moving parts to this. I know everybody in this room understands that their cost center kind of has to get reconciled and rolled up into all these other moving parts. So getting to a 30-day close and getting it to council this quick, I think is a record, as City Manager Ford mentioned. Two things I want to say on the general. One of them is always the number that we estimate as closely as we can every year is the sales taxes. And it looks like year-to-date, we were estimating, now is this one simply divided by 12 also, or do we do a curve on this one?
That one is simply divided by 12, multiplied by 9 to get the 42,375,000.
Okay, for the next year's budget, let's put a little more science into it as to when the seasonality, so we can get a better feel for if we're keeping up with last year.
Absolutely.
Because
Thank
in
you.
my mind, I was thinking we were at 42, we'd budgeted 42, and we're actually at 45, which is ahead. But if it's just a simple times 12, maybe it's not as meaningful as I thought. The other thing I want to point out is, and this goes across the board on all of the cost centers or profit centers, we're doing a great job on managing the cost of our salaries and wages and bennies. We budget to a certain amount. I think in every cost center, you're going to see some savings there. And I know that we looked to this as we set next year's budget as well. But I just want to commend all the cost center managers and the middle managers that make this all work on cost consciousness and overhead consciousness and making sure that we're controlling expenses. Great job. I'll let you proceed with the other cost centers now, the other funds.
Thank you, Mayor. Turning over to our water fund, and I do want to mention, going back to sales tax, Blue's going to go a little bit more into the sales tax number when we get into our budget presentation, so thank you for those comments. So switching gears over to our water fund, when we look at charges for services, which is our largest revenue source, those are our various charges for the water service that we've got to different customers. We've got a $67.4 million budget, $45.366 million in collections. That's good for 67% of budget. Probably a little bit lower than we would anticipate because all of the rain earlier in the summer, but as you know, it's gotten hotter, and so we anticipate additional collections and additional water sales in July, August, and September. Also further down is interest earnings. We're at 134% of budget there. We had a $1.2 million budget, $1.6 million in interest. Total revenue for the water fund is at 62% of budget. Again, looking down at your expense categories, the salaries and wages and employee benefits are at 69% and 68% respectively. Most of that's due to turnover within the fund, and that's tracking lower than the 75% of budget. We've got purchase property services category is at 117%, and that's offset by a little bit lower expenses in the other purchase services category. The expenses for the water fund are at $57,182,000. That's good for 70% spent or encumbered for the year. Drilling in a little bit more on the revenues and the expenses, Our largest account for revenues are metered water sales. That's $39.4 million collected, 64.4% of budget. I looked at the projection of this earlier today, and I'm projecting slightly under revenues in this particular account by about $250,000. That would align with kind of how much rain that we got in the beginning of the summer. So we're going to be just a little bit below the amount of budgeted water sales.
And that's pretty consistent. If we get a pretty rainy year, our revenue for water sales is lower than in a drought year when it's actually kind of perversely much higher. Is that right?
Absolutely, you are correct, Councilman. Thank you. The raw water sales amount, this is a smaller revenue source. It's at $93,000 or 33.1% of budget. And charges for services for account turn-ons is $1.1 million or 109.5% of budget. When we look at expenses, including those encumbrances, the water transmission and distribution water mains maintenance account is at it's under budget by about $901,000 or 44.8% of budget. That number could go up through the rest of the fiscal year as we account for expenses in July, August, and September. The water treatment special services account, that's for our contract services, has spent or encumbered $1.3 million or 111.8%. Water treatment for supplies and chemicals is at $3.9 million or 111.8%. And we do have supplies and chemical accounts in several funds going over budget. You're going to hear that comment a couple of more times in the presentation.
Colin, are those over budget through 9 months or over budget through on an annual
It's
basis?
over budget for the year, and that does include those encumbrances. So there might be some money encumbered in those accounts that are also causing it to go over budget. Those overages are offset generally by savings in other accounts as the departments manage their budgets. Our wastewater fund charges for services, this includes the wastewater fund plus the WMARS fund. And our charges for services are at 76% of budget, $52.2 million collections year to date. Our interest earnings in this fund are doing well also at $1.349 million or 124% of budget. Total revenue is at 69% of budget. When we look at the expense categories, our salaries and wages accounts are at 67 and 65% respectively. Capital expenditures are lagging a little bit behind. Those are at 55% of budget. And then transfers out are at 56% of budget. Again, like I mentioned, the transfers out to our capital project cash CIP funds. Total expenses are at 69% of budget for the wastewater and WMARS fund. The WMARS capacity charge, just digging into these numbers a little bit more, is at $4 million or 73.5% of budget. That's right on track. We have a transfer in from the TIF 4 fund that has not been completed, so that's drawing revenues down a little bit or making revenues lag. So that transfer has not been completed. That's the TIF 4 transfer that's used to pay some wastewater debt and offset those expenses. And then the WMARS charges for services for outside customers are at $845,000 or 105.7%. Expenses, including encumbrances for the WMARS central plant, again, that's chemical supplies, are exceeding budget there. And then our wastewater collection for the road and streets maintenance account, that has spent or encumbered $1.5 million or 109.4% of budget. And you might ask, why do we have street and road expense in the wastewater fund? If they do a repair, like a line repair, like you see in front of you, when they go back to repair the street, they charge those supplies to repair that street for a line break back to that account. Our solid waste fund is at 58% of total budgeted revenues. Digging into the charges for services, they're at 66%. The largest charges for services are for residential service and commercial services for solid waste collections. Those are doing well at 76 and 80% respectively. Those are our two largest accounts there in the solid waste fund. Those are offset by transfer station revenues that we had anticipated receiving this fiscal year that we're not going to receive until next fiscal year because of the transfer station opening in October. So that has pushed those revenues back. Landfill revenues are also lagging a little bit as well. Looking at expenses, the salaries and wages and employee benefits, because of turnover, those are lower than budgeted amounts there at 58% and 64% respectively. That's offset by expenses and encumbrances in the other purchase services account at 99%. Total expenses for the fund are at 66% or $31.023 million. Again, drilling down into the revenues a little bit more, I mentioned the charges for services for the transfer station. The charges for services for the roll-off are at $1.1 million or 124.5% of budget, and charges for services from the landfill are at $6.2 million or 54.7%. So those are some of those that are lagging a little bit behind, but again, the largest sources of residential and commercial are tracking right on budget with the 75% benchmark through the year. Expenses, including encumbrances, our landfill closure account has spent or encumbered 0% of budget. It's about a $768,000 budget, so it has not spent anything yet year to date. The special services account has, for the MSW 2400 account, has spent or encumbered $508,000 or 71.7%. And the sustainability account is lagging behind as well, $50,000 or 19.4%. Our drainage fund, which is primarily our drainage fee revenue, as our charges for services are at $9 million budget. That's right on track at 75% of collections, $6,763,000. When you look at interest collections in this one, we've earned $157,000 for interest collections based on a $50,000 budget. That's a little bit higher. Expenses by category, you can see those salaries and employee benefits. Expenses in the drainage fund are at 52% and 54% respectively. We've had higher than anticipated expenses for professional and technical services at 114%. Capital expenditures are at 63%, and those transfers out are at 8%. So total expenses based on the budget are at 38%, and again, that's lagging behind because of that annual transfer out to the CIP, cash CIP expense funds. Expenses including encumbrances, just to drill in on a couple of expense accounts. Our stormwater operations, machinery, and equipment has spent or encumbered $911,000 or 58.3%. And our engineering special services contract account has spent or encumbered $706,000 or 140.7% of budget. Our Cameron Park Zoo Fund, charges for services is mostly admission revenues plus some rental revenue from some of the facilities out there. But it's at 82% of budget, $2.392 million in collections, $2.9 million budget. Net merchandise sales are at 76% of budget. And our transfers in are at 50% of budget. So total revenues are at 63% for the Cameron Park Zoo. When you look at the expenses, our professional and technical services, maintenance accounts, and other purchase services are over budget there based on spending plus those encumbrances, and they're offset by the purchase property services account, supplies, and other operating expenses. Total expense budget is $11.165 million. Total expenses year to date are $7,012,176. That's 63% spent or encumbered for the Cameron Park Zoo Fund.
I did notice on the Cameron Park Zoo that we are over year. The year-over-year one is actual 9 months. It's not simply divided by 12, is it?
That is correct. You're talking about the year-over-year, the orange columns,
Yep.
Mayor? Yes, sir. That is the revised budget. Actual year-to-date is through June 30th of '24.
Cool. So the year-over-year there, it looks good. I mean, as far as beating the, both the two things I look at on this one are the merch and the admissions, and it looks like year-over-year we beat them on, we're doing well. So that is good, but it's not, just to confirm, I can't really do that analysis in the blue columns, right, to the right.
That is correct.
Okay. All right.
But to your point, and you're exactly correct, on the year-to-year variance for charges for services, we're 3% up, so that's
And
good news.
25% over on merch. Yes. So that's good trend.
Yep,
I think I remember Nancy Lacy promising us if we got penguins, more people would show up. So Nancy, you were right, and they're buying more stuff. Imagine that.
Thanks, Nancy. It's all coming true.
And specifically drilling into the admissions account, it's at 2.4 million or 84.2% of budget, so you can see how higher trended that is compared to budget. On the expense side, the utility services account for water has spent or encumbered $143,000 or 27.5% of budget, so that's low compared to the budgeted amount. Looks like the budget was set a bit high based on prior year spending, but we'll take that savings in that account. The zoo special services account is spent or encumbered $382,000 or 141.9. So again, the zoo's managing those expenses within their budget. When we look at the Cottonwood Creek Golf Course Fund, our charges for services of the different charges that they've got out there in terms of green fees and cart fees, et cetera, that's at 78% of budget for revenues. And our interest earnings for the golf course fund are at $73,000 or 184% of budget. And net merchandise sales for the golf course are at 70% of budget there. So total revenues for the golf course fund are at 75% of budget. When you look at the salaries and employee salaries and wages and employee benefits, those are at 73% and 75% respectively. Maintenance has spent or encumbered 102%, and you can see that it's being offset by the lower expenses and encumbrances in the account category for like other operating expenses and supplies as well. Capital expenditures are only $48,000 budget, but they have spent or encumbered 100% of that. Total expenses are at 78% of budget. When you look at the next slide, our green fees and our cart fees are at 80.1% of budget, and the golf course cart fees are at 71.4% of budget. So I wanted to zone in on a couple of the major revenue sources there for the golf course. And then the expenses, including encumbrances for customer service special services contract account, has spent or encumbered $43,000 or 93.2% of budget. That's for things like custodial charges and pest control. And again, our maintenance and chemical supplies account is $48,000 or 85.5% spent or encumbered of budget based on what I'd said earlier about chemicals and things costing more there. When we look at our airport fund, our charges for services are at 80% of budget, $742,000. There's multiple revenue accounts here, hangar fees, flowage fees, arrival fees, but those are at 80% of budget, a little bit higher than that 75% benchmark through the year. Our other revenues, which are primarily concessions, are at 74% of budget. And when you look down at the expenses, we've got lower than anticipated expenses for salaries and wages and employee benefits. That's offset by higher expenses, 157% for professional and technical services. That's for the contract for the interim airport manager expenses, as well as the contract for the executive recruitment there. And so that's offset by the savings in the salaries and benefits. Capital expenditures are at $63,525. There's no budget there, but we are doing a budget amendment later on in this council meeting, so a lot of these items will be cleaned up here. Total expenses spent or encumbered are 90% of budget. And drilling a little bit more on these revenues for the airport arrival area revenue, that's at $99,000 or 114.9% of budget, so that's good news there, above budget. Airport passenger facility fees are at 0% through June, but I did look at these numbers today. We are caught up in July. That's a quarterly payment, and so those are caught up to $159,000, and those are going to be posted in July, so they'll be reflected in the next report that you see. And airport landing fees are at 179.3% of budget. And again, I mentioned the expenses, including encumbrances for the airport special services, for the airport manager search. That's at 169.4% in that budget account. And again, that includes a lot of their contract services money. Airport machinery and equipment, again, is spent or encumbered $63,000 or 100% of budget. For the Texas Ranger Hall of Fame Fund, our charges for services there, primarily admissions revenue, is at 67% of budget. And interest earnings there are just a little bit higher than budget by $7,000. That's at 172% of budget. Net merchandise sales are at 69% of budget. So total revenues for the Texas Ranger Hall of Fame Fund are at 64% of budget. You can see their expenses further down below. Most of these are on track. Some are higher than the 75% benchmark. Salaries and wages and employee benefits are at 71% and 67% respectively there. Transfers out has yet to be done. That'll be caught up again in July. And our total expenses are at 63% of budget for the Texas Ranger Hall of Fame Fund. Again, drilling down specifically into admissions revenues, that's at 72% of budget, so just a little bit lower than that 75% benchmark through the year. And the Hall of Fame Special Services Contract Services account is spent or encumbered $145,000 or 98.8% of budget for the Ranger Hall of Fame Fund. Finally, for our Street Maintenance Fund, we've got our intergovernmental revenues are unbudgeted, but we've received $102,830 there. That's some state grant revenue that's unbudgeted, but we received to offset some of our expenses. Our charges for services for our street maintenance fee are at 77% of budget, so just a little bit higher than that 75% of the year benchmark. It's $2 million, it's about $2 million even collected for street maintenance fees. And interest is at $354,000, so that's a nice amount of interest earnings in the street maintenance fee that can go against these street maintenance expenses. Salaries and wages and employee benefits are at 62% and 61% respectively. Maintenance and supplies are lagging a little bit behind at 72% and 61% respectively. So the total budget is on track at 74% or $17,231,028 spent or encumbered through June 30th. Drilling in a little bit more on these expenses, the street maintenance construction expenses, they're at 22% or $194,000 in that account. The street roadway and maintenance account is spent or encumbered 67.4% or $412,000. The street maintenance special services account has spent or encumbered $592,000 or 81.6% of budget. So before I pivot over to our quarterly investment report, I'll stop there and see if you have any questions on any of the numbers that I reviewed previously. And if you don't, then I'll just give you a high-level overview of our quarterly investment report.
Colin, I had a quick question, excuse me, and a quick comment. Going back to the very first slide, can you remind me, the contracts with others, what sorts of things go into that?
Yes, sir. So our contracts with others is going to include things like payments to the appraisal district. They're going to include, and you know, the appraisal district's basically, I mean, it's a set contract because they're the only appraisal district that's going to be handling that for us. Contracts with others would also include things like our audit services contract and payments to other companies or even other entities that we have a contract with to provide services.
Okay, thanks. And then I would echo the mayor's sentiments earlier that by and large, your expenses are right on track, which is testament to good budgeting and good management.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a testament to our department directors who are looking at these numbers and managing it, as well as our budget analysts as well. Okay, so our quarterly investment report, just wanted to go over this on a high-level summary view. So as you can see, our par value, I'm at the top left of this slide, our par value March 31st, it was $889.656 million. It's grown to $973.351 million. And the primary driver for that increase are the 2025 certificates of obligation that we received back in May, I believe. And then we turned around and we invested that money based on the spend of those CIP projects. So that's why you've seen the total growth of our investment portfolio grow so much there. You can see the market value is now at $972.911 million. Our unrealized gain, our net unrealized gain for the quarter is at $1,041,898.31. Continuing down, looking at the bottom left is our asset allocation. So you can see how our investment assets are distributed among the various investment categories. LGIP stands for Local Government Investment Pools. Those are a very liquid source of money for us. That's at 37.92%. And again, our portfolio is managed based on the Texas Public Funds Investment Act, primarily focusing on safety and preservation of principal, then liquidity, your ability to convert to cash, and then finally yield. So we manage on yield as our final, but we focus on safety first and then liquidity. Looking in the middle column under the income summary, you can see net income for October 1st for the fiscal year through June 30th is $29,665,841. So that's a nice return that we've received for the city's cash. Yield to maturity of the portfolio went slightly down from 4.324% to 4.223%. And then you can see the duration of the portfolio. It increased slightly as we took receipt of those bond proceeds and then invested those out on cash ladder out into the future based on how and when we think we're going to spend that money. So that concludes my comments on the city's third quarter investment portfolio, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Any questions for Blue and Colin? None? I always love this report. This page, there's a second page that goes with it. It was in the informal report about that 29 million is material. I mean, it really helps our budget too. Helps me that we are sitting on. That's not all just cash laying around. I've got to tell people that's committed to. Most of the CIP projects. There are some reserves, and then we have pretty strong reserves. I'm sure we'll get into that here in our new budget discussion. But great report overall.
Thank you, Mayor.
Bradley, do you want me to? Are you just roaming around the building here, or what?
Blue and Colin on this next work session, and they'll cover the majority of the presentation, obviously, but want to provide a few introductory comments on this next work session, which is our presentation of the FY26 proposed budget. The charter requires a few things out of the city manager, but the primary one I look to every year on the calendar is the filing of a budget. And this presentation really symbolizes the passing of the torch, so to speak, from the manager's proposed budget into the council's hands, where you want to go with the budget leading into adoption. And so I wanted to kind of give you the context of where we started this budget season. And Blue will be adding additional details to this, but actually it was in this room I gathered about 100 of our employees, department heads, our budget analysts, anybody involved in expenditures and revenues in the city, and I sat with them for about a year. Or it felt like a year.
But they enjoyed that.
I sat with them for about an hour with a whiteboard and kind of documented in my mind what the challenges of this budget season were going to be. And talked about inflation, talked about tariffs, talked about state and federal dollars that were evaporating out of our budget, talked about slowing revenue growth, talked about expenditures that were increasing beyond our means, and painted a picture of a budget season that was going to be difficult. And what you'll see in the proposed budget today is that team, I put a call out to them. I said, I want to produce $24 million of savings across all funds. About half of it, I wanted it in the general fund, and the other half amongst the other funds. And Blue and Colin will tell you in a minute, that we're north of $30 million that the departments and the budget team produced in savings, most of that being in recurring expenditures, which means they will be beneficial to us in future years. Because one of the messages I think is important for everybody to recognize is this is not a one-year dilemma. It's probably got a couple more years to it. The pressures that are on our budget are not going to be gone next year or the year after. And so by focusing in on recurring expenditures, really will set us on a firm foundation for future years' budgets as well. So very thankful for the team, thankful for the council's input and guidance along the way, and I look forward to Blue presenting you with a very detailed presentation of our proposed FY26 budget.
Thank you, City Manager Ford. Mayor, Council, good to be with you. Before I start, none of this really is possible with just the people at this table or our directors, so I really want to acknowledge our Office of Management budget staff, OMB staff. They are in the back like good finance people always are, kind of fade to the background, but I do want to acknowledge them and all the hard work that they've done. Mayor, Council, I don't know if you know this or not, but this is the first year that this whole team has operated together. The entire team is new to this department this year, so we got a new team that went through this process together. They performed phenomenally well. Very, very proud of them. Thankful for all the work that they put in. So I want to acknowledge them first and foremost in all of this. Council, like City Manager Ford said, what you're seeing today is the proposed budget. It's a budget that we are recommending to you, balancing our financial position along with the goals, the objectives, and the directives that this council has given us. It's structurally a balanced budget, complies with all state laws, all city charter laws that we have to do, ordinances, resolutions, everything that we have to do on that. I was lost for words there for a second.
But generally, it's pretty legal, is what you're saying.
It is pretty legal. It's
pretty legit.
It's pretty legit. So this budget really represents what we believe are the needs of not only the city, but this organization. Ultimately, Council, this is your budget, as City Manager Ford said. This is yours. We are going to, at this time, transition this over to you as we present. So if there are any questions, comments, any changes that you would like to see, anything that you would like us to dive deeper into, please let us know as we go through this. There will be some actions related to this budget on today's agenda. First, you're going to have Resolution 2025-508. That's going to set the public hearing for our budget for September 2nd. So we do have to have that public hearing before we adopt a budget. Resolution 2025-509 sets the maximum tax rate. This allows us to start the legal process of the adoption process going forward, doing all of the required publications and notifications that we have to do. Also in that resolution is setting the public hearing again for September 2nd here in the council chambers for the tax rate. We do have to have a separate public hearing for both the budget and the tax rate. We'll do both of those on September 2nd, and then we'll come back on September 9th for a special council meeting for the second reading of that ordinance setting the tax rate. Ultimately, at that point, your budget will be adopted. Also, Ordinance 2025-550 is part of the charter requirements. This is the first reading today to set the departments for this budget cycle. So, Member Council, let's dive right into it. Overall agenda today, going to give you a little bit of where we are, what kind of drove us into this direction. City Manager Ford has already gone into this a little bit, but the budget development itself, including all the fund summaries, models, and rate plans, will go into CIP, just an overview of that, the funding packages that were approved, the remaining calendar, and then we will take any questions that you have. But first and foremost, just a little bit of an executive overview on this budget. what we're looking at. Overall, the key highlights that we've given you, we've done a lot of groundwork before this meeting, giving you a lot of the backstory, a lot of the fiscal year 25 in review. Colin just did a great job going over our current financial position. So we will look really at fiscal year 26 and going forward in this presentation, this half of the presentation. But overall budget, $649.8 million. This is only a $0.8 million increase from fiscal year 25. Because a lot of the things that we have done through this budget cycle, the way that we have tried to become more efficient, we have been able to keep an overall very flat budget while maintaining the services that we're providing today. This does contemplate keeping the tax rate at 75.5 cents per $100 valuation. If adopted at 75.5 cents, this will be the third fiscal year at that tax rate. The general fund revenues and expenditures are structurally balanced at $210.3 million. This does include a $2.3 million transfer from surplus. We will go into kind of why that happened when we talk about property taxes. Our strategic investments through this budget, to keep in mind, $20.3 million investment in personnel compensation and benefits. It's a very large number, but in a service industry like we are in, your people are always going to be one of the largest expenses you have, and so we are investing in our people to try to be able to serve the citizens and the businesses, the residents of Waco in the best manner possible. We also have a $134.2 million capital improvement program. This is going to get back to a little bit of blocking and tackling, really focusing on the infrastructure modernization, kind of the basic infrastructure that the city needs. Enhancements to public safety are in here. Public safety services have an increase of about $9.6 million. Some of that is compensation and benefits. So as you see on the long-term commitments, this is year 3 of the fire and police contracts. So overall, you're going to see an 8.1% blended increase between fire and police. Again, like City Manager Ford was talking about, achieving $32.2 million of operational efficiencies while maintaining those current services that we are providing. We are contemplating a non-civil service general service increase of 3.5% on compensation. Our TMRS, we will go into a little bit detail on that. Health insurance is always a big one for us. The health insurance costs continue to rise. We're recommending splitting the increase between the city and the employees at 14% for the city portion, 6% for the employees, and again, we will go into detail on that. Looking at some of the economic risks that we're under, sales tax volatility, we always have that. It's one of the biggest things that we have in our budget that could go up just as fast as it could go down. So we will look into that, what we're recommending on sales tax, property tax. We'll dive into that one as well. So really what we're going to look at are some of the mitigation strategies that we have to offset some of these operational and economic risks that are listed above that you can read. Maintaining a healthy fund balance is always number one. We've got to make sure that we have the position to absorb any downturn in the economy that we have. We're also going to be conservative in our revenue projections, but we're also going to be realistic in those. We don't want to undercut ourselves too much to where we can't provide the services that we need, but also we can't be too aggressive to be sitting on the other side of that fence. There are comprehensive efficiency initiatives in this budget. We've mentioned it a couple of times already. It's a big portion, but it really reset our base for our expenditures. And then that deliberate capital planning process to make sure that we're attacking and approaching exactly what is needed in this city. So the environment that we're in, just a very quick overview, inflation and consumer prices. Inflation has moderated some over the last few months, but still standing well above that 2.0% target that the Fed has. Headline CPI is at 2.7% year over year as of June. The core PCE inflation is still holding at around that 2.9%. Inflation is just really sticky right now. We expect to end the year at 2.8. Depending on what happens in the economy as a whole, projections are wide at this point. We're projecting about 3.2% for 2026. There are several projections that are much higher than that, a few that are a little bit lower than that. So 3.2 is kind of where we see inflation heading for the next year that we're in. On gross domestic product, Q1 of the calendar year 2025 contracted by about 0.5%. Q2 estimates for real GDP growth are about 2.4%. Really, that's going to be a lot of imports. There was a surge on imports to try to get ahead of all the tariff increases that are being contemplated at the federal level right now. So, you know, that 2.4% growth may be a little bit artificial. So we are watching that. Forecasts are all over the place on GDP. Expected to slow down. Some projections for the year going into next year looking at a 1.7% decline. So something that we really have to watch at this point. Consumer sentiment, again, tied to a lot with our sales tax and sales tax forecasts. How are people feeling out there? That consumer sentiment is down to 60.7. That is down 11% versus June of last year. So very drastic drop, and we do not expect that to get any better at this time. How are we doing here in Waco? Population, you know, really what we've seen from 2015 to 2024 is a little over 1% growth per year in that, the annual growth coming up very nicely. However, 2025 through 2029, we're looking at just a slight reduction in that. A lot of people are starting to stay put where they are, so not a lot of coming into or out of the city of Waco, but just a slight increase year over year projecting going forward. Labor force still holding strong, still that labor force participation rate staying in the high 60s, 64. So we will watch labor force participation. Unemployment has moderated since the pandemic, just below 4%. We expect that to stay where it is. And on the Waco poverty rate, still at that 21.8% for 2024, looking at 21.2 as we have some industries coming in that are paying good wages, above market wages. We do expect the poverty rate to decline over the next 5 years down to that 19.1%.
And Blue, just for clarification on those last several slides, kind of the demographics and others, these are City of Waco, not MSA, right?
These are, yes, these are City of Waco.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
All right, some of the major budget drivers that we have. Again, the proposed tax rate maintains the current rate of 75.5 cents per $100 valuation. This is the lowest in 17 plus years. We are shifting about 2 cents over from M&O to INS, the maintenance and operation rate, what we use on a daily basis to pay our employees, pay for supplies, pay for our actual operations. INS is interest and sinking. That is the debt rate. So all the debt that has been issued has a special rate that goes along with it that pays that debt service. On our certified rates, the no new revenue rate came in at 74.0487 cents. Our voter approval tax rate, or VATR, came in on certifieds at 83.0148. So we are between the no new revenue rate and the VATR rate. Proposed rate is about 1.96% above that no new revenue rate. And again, you can see how that breaks down between M&O and INS. What you're going to see on the far right side is actually a drop in M&O revenue in this current budget year from $91.2 million of M&O expected levy down to $89.7 million. Again, a lot of that has to do with a lot of how the certified values came in. And again, we will walk through that here in a minute. Value of 1 cent on our tax rate has increased from 1.5 to 1.57 million dollars. Some of the proposed utility rate increases. Base rate on water is going to stay constant at 16.5 cents, but we do have some volumetric changes from FY25 to FY26. On the wastewater, we do have a base rate increase of 81 cents and 21 cents on the volumetric. Solid waste, we're recommending a base pickup change. That was part of the plan for the transfer station and the new landfill. That's coming in at $1.41. Drainage, we're recommending we drop that by $1 per month from $6.55 to $5.55, while our street maintenance fee increasing from $2 to $4 in fiscal year '26. Overall, what is the impact on the average taxpayer out there? You know, we want to show this overall taxpayer impact. So all of this, how does that affect our residents on a daily basis between everything that they're going to pay to the city of Waco? And on an annual basis, in fiscal year ‑25, the average customer out there using 8,000 gallons of water, 5,000 gallons of wastewater, one cart, just the normal, the hypothetical average house out there would pay $3,078.31 to the city of Waco between property tax and their utilities for the year. Under this new plan for fiscal year '28, under the proposed, that will go up by $134.20. If council were to, this is part of the new state law, we have to disclose this. So if we were to adopt the no new revenue tax rate, instead of going from $3,078.31 to $3,212, that's going to go up to $3,183. So even at the no new revenue rate, under these proposed, the average taxpayer out there would still see a $105.20 increase in their annual payments to the city of Waco. So let's go into the property taxes and kind of a little bit of the backstory on where we came out between the proposed that you saw, especially during the budget retreat, and now. Certified values come out at the end of July. So we've had just a little bit of time to process this and kind of look into what happened. So the certified values in fiscal year '25, including all the new property, went from $16.1 billion up to almost $18.2 billion. We saw a $2 billion increase from our fiscal year '25 certifieds to our fiscal year '26 preliminary values. That's a 12.4% increase. Now, we are familiar with this process, and we know that there is always a little bit of a drop between your preliminary values and your certified values. So we anticipated that $18.1, $18.2 billion certified value, or excuse me, preliminary value, was going to drop somewhere between 6 to 7%. We anticipated that. We put that into the budget that we were planning with. When certifieds actually came out, the ARB certifieds in the blue, our certifieds came out at a total, you see down there, at $16.6 billion. That is a substantial drop, a $1.6 billion drop from the preliminary to the actual certified values. So overall, from fiscal year '25 at 16.2 up to 16.6 billion for certifieds, that's only a 2.6% increase. And if you go down by the property classifications, you're going to see single-family residence was about a 4.2% increase. While you see some of the drops in others, I have this broken out. But first, we're going to go into the excluding the new property. So this is same property that we're looking at year over year. So same properties in fiscal year '25 that are now in the same roles in fiscal year '26. And if you see that 4.2 on the single family went down to 2.2%. So that pretty much was offset completely by the commercial real property, personal property, and some of the other categories. So once you take out the new property that was added to the rolls, and you're looking at the new ARB certified values, the city of Waco essentially got no new value whatsoever from our property taxes. So $16.1 billion up to $16.2 billion, a 0.2% increase. What this did is it takes money directly out of your maintenance and operations. So this amount of a drop created an immediate $4 million deficit in our general fund budget that we had to reorganize and shift some of the expenses out to make up this $4 million gap.
We think a lot of that is just due to the property tax protests being, I guess, just having a higher percentage or a higher percentage of reductions than they had in prior years. So it just was something that was outside of our historical ability to predict. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. Completely out of the norm. There were a lot more protests this year than there have historically been. And also the amount granted on those protests was higher than normal. So we got hit on both ends, more people and more of relief given in the drop in property tax values. So
Traditionally, we get 3 or 4 updates from May to that July report that Blue was referring to. And the gap, as it works through ARB, gets tighter and tighter and tighter. So by the end, by July, we're pretty certain within a relative small degree, percentage-wise, where we'll end up. And this year broke the model for sure. And certainly, as Blue said, if you look at common properties that were there last year and this year, basically no difference in the revenue generated off those, what we call common properties. We can handle that for 1 year because the staff has put together so much savings. If that turns into a trend, it's going to be quite difficult.
And just let me confirm, these values are net of exemptions, net of,
these are net of all exemptions, yes, and all the TIF values that are going out to.
you have the TIF as well. Okay. Right. Then I guess it would be, maybe it's not directly to the budget, it would be interesting for me to see what is the trend of that top line. I always like to focus on that also. Is there true value creation, and is it being washed out by I say washed out, maybe we're giving exemptions as sort of a tax break, but the net as it reflects here, you're seeing tax breaks above this number, and also TERS.
Absolutely.
TERS being
So Mayor,
trapped.
I can tell you on the top line, we saw about a 2% growth in our values. So going from that top line of almost 23 million, we're at 23.4 million, or billion, excuse me.
Billion, yeah.
Billion.
And what actually hits the rolls and taxable through those exemptions you're talking about. Yep. 6-point-something billion off. And we're going to show you some interesting, Blue's put together some interesting slides on the exemptions because obviously those provide a ton of tax relief to various entities.
Exactly.
Actions that this body's taken, important actions on exemption increases, as well as the state, have a material impact to property taxpayers. And it has a material impact to our budget as well.
Yes, sir. So just looking at the annual growth by category, just larger categories, because the one table is kind of hard to see as it relates to everything. You know, you're looking at the annual growth rate since fiscal year 23. Single family has grown about 3.6% per year, but you look at the multifamily, the commercial, with all the activity here in Waco, those two have dropped about 3.3% per year, 1.5% on the commercial. Industrial has grown. We've seen some of the large companies that have come in, but only at about 2% per year growth. The other category shows 2.1, but as you can see on the far right, that's really is negligible. It is kind of one of those one-off little categories. So overall, you know, we are seeing in Waco a little bit of shift, you know, away from the commercial and the industrial, multifamily over to single family on the valuations. All right, Mayor, as you were alluding to, and City Manager Ford alluded to, the property tax exemptions. You can see tax year 23, 24, and 25, where those have really grown in the exemption amounts that we're giving. So right now in tax year 25, sitting at a little over $6 billion in exemptions given. This is broken out by the local portion of that and the state portion, which again, the state portion we have no control over. That local portion, 1.8, going up in tax year 23, relates a lot to the homestead exemptions that we have elected into. But again, that has grown from 1.8 billion up to almost 2.2 billion in the 3 years that has been offered. So what we're getting to right now is the exemptions equate to almost 28% of our certified values. So quite a bit of difference over the last few years. All right, when we talk about the property tax revenue, the increase that's going to come, overall, it's only a $2.5 million increase in revenue from taxes. Again, the general fund maintenance and operation is going down by about 1.5 million, debt service going up by 4 million. You can see how that breaks down. So the existing properties, what we're going to bring in on the maintenance and operations side is really a drop of 3.5 million. New property coming on is going to offset that by 2 million. On the debt service side, the existing properties coming in about 3.4 of that 4 million, with new properties paying about 600,000. So overall, if you're combining the existing properties, our overall revenue for existing properties is actually going down slightly, and slightly offset by the $2.6 million, which makes up almost the entire bit of the total revenue that's coming into the city of Waco.
That leverage on that page, Blue, that 4 million is just the general fund. It doesn't include all the utility funds, right?
The 4 million for the debt service, that's just the tax-backed debt.
Got it.
That does not include the utility debt.
Right. Thanks.
So let's look at the average home. The average home in Waco on the straight valuation side, single family, average taxable value increased from 225,000 up to 235,000. That's a 4.3% increase. So from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 26, you see that total change in the property tax bill is $62.08 per year. That is the appraisal impact, since we do not have a tax rate change implemented for this year or programmed in for this year. A little bit of a tax rate overview. Again, you see Waco's maintained this 75.5 cents for the last 2 years, and what we are recommending for fiscal year 26, that is down slightly from the year prior at 76 cents, and then you can see the prior years out to 2017. So again, moderate decreases over the last 10 years. The M&O and the INS splits really going from that 85-15 down to a 77-23 ratio. Mayor, I know we've talked about this, council. Overall, where Waco was in fiscal year 25 is on that left side, 80% going to O&M, about that 20% going to debt. How does that compare to our comparable cities? You know, if you look at the average without Waco, the average was about 65% M&O, 35% debt. The median trending along that same lines. We put in Waco fiscal year 26 where we are because we are increasing our debt, the INS rate. Even with what we are programming in for fiscal year 26, we are still well above the average and the median on our M&O rate. So instead of 65, 62.2, we will be at that 77.4%, and on the INS rate, 22.6, as opposed to 35 to 37.8% on the comparable cities.
It's a great slide, Blue. I know it's kind of a new one that we've looked at, but fantastic.
All right, moving into sales tax. Overall, sales tax has been surprisingly great this year. We've been surprised for several months in a row. So right now, on the current month that we have, the percent of prior year actuals is up about 13.5%, 9.4% on the year to date, fiscal year to date budget. So exceeding expectations, that continues to rise. Overall collections, we had budgeted at $56.5 million. Our forecasted collections are coming in close to that $60.5 million mark, about $4 million over budget, 7.1% over budget. This is great news for us. We have fiscal year 26 budgeted at that $60.5 million. We're keeping that stable. because we're going to go into a little bit of why. You know, what we noticed, like I said, over the last few years or the last few months, is almost those double-digit increases. We've had several increases. We haven't had a single month that's been below our budgeted number, which has been shocking to us a little bit because of the environment that we're in. So we started doing a little bit of a deeper dive and a little bit deeper analysis on this, looking at the 10 industries that we have here in Waco: accommodation, ag, food, general, manufacturing, miscellaneous, professional service, retail, and wholesale. And what you see on the right side is what I want to kind of pay attention to in the blue. Really what we're seeing year over year as a percent increase, $1.2 million increase in that general services really stands out to us. Also on the wholesale side, but the retail as well at 5.5, that's another $1 million. So we wanted to take even a deeper dive into that and look at what's really going on. These are the top 10 sub-industries. So you're going to see the sub-industry on the left side of this table. The industry is that second column and what that makes up. So these top 10 sub-industries make up almost 70% of our total tax collection. So these 10 sub-industries are extremely important to us. So we kind of felt like we need to know exactly what's going on. So again, we're using the momentum and signal. So it's a 12/36 variance to get your momentum, and that 6-month moving average is your signal line. You always want that momentum, like we talked about last time, that momentum to stay above your signal. And you can see we're trending right there with our signal line the entire time over the last several months. But that December, January, February really popped and stood out to us. That's an abnormality that we wanted to look further into and figure out what was going on in our economy that could have been causing that type of bump. And as we look through those 10 sub-industries, I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but this is the one that really stood out to us. And it's everything related to the construction activity that we've seen here in Waco. The trend, not only on the 12 and 36 moving averages, but also the momentum and the signal are lining up. So what this is when a lot of these developments start taking place, especially in the industrial and commercial spheres, is we get what is called the use tax on all of the equipment that those companies are bringing in and setting up inside their businesses. So everything that they're buying, we get a portion of that as use tax that goes into this. So what we're saying is this is likely the reason that for the past several months, we've been seeing a greater than expected bump in our sales tax. Great news for us, but also leads us to be a little bit more cautious for the future. The reason that we're keeping it at 60.5, which is where we expect to end the year, is as we're looking at those other top 10 subcategories. Those are all trending right along where we expect them to. So they're not showing any weakness to where we expect them to go to. The way that they're trending, we expect those to continue on in that same amount, that same trend, which would lead us to about that $60.5 million mark for next year.
So put simply, and I think it's point well made, obviously, but put simply, we're not betting on that trend to continue because we know we're in a little bit of a bubble from a industrial standpoint. We've had a great couple of years, a couple of really major plants under construction now is where that green shows up.
In the subcategories, we had restaurants leading the way there by a good margin. I've got to say is a bit surprising when you think about kind of, you talked about consumer sentiment and things like that. Typically, one of the first things to go is excess spending, eating out and things like that. So I'm curious if you have any insight into kind of why that's number one with a bullet on this.
It's an interesting one, and Councilman, it's one that I've seen. Usually, I know the sentiment analysis is out there that's one of the places people pull back, but it's not one that I typically see pull back first.
Okay. Yeah.
It typically stays pretty high. People continue to eat out. This does have a lot to do with not just restaurants, but fast casual and fast food restaurants.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when you think about it from the standpoint of, drive-throughs and things like that, when weighed against, the talk of really high grocery prices. And not talk, I mean, my HEB orders are much larger now in price than they have been. It's a lot easier to justify the quick trip to the drive-through than going to the grocery store sometimes, so.
Sir.
Great, thanks for that.
Great analysis, Lou.
All right, Mayor, Council, moving into a little bit of the budget development, continuing forward. Again, I'm just going to highlight a little bit on this. We've talked about this in depth a couple of times, but I think it's worth noting because this is really what has enabled us to continue forward with the budget that we're recommending today, and that is the efficiency efforts that really reset our base spending. So the strategic context, City Manager Ford outlined that, and what our objectives were $24 million in total operational enhancements. So $12 million from general fund, $12 million from the other funds. This was a citywide initiative. All departments collaborated to provide the efficiencies that we needed. So the implementation framework that we laid out was first and foremost the workforce optimization, looking at the vacant positions that we have, the positions that we had frozen, and really were we able to get our job done without those positions actually programmed into our budget. Some of that was yes, some of that was no. But if we could eliminate some vacancies, historic vacancies, then that is one of the places that we did look towards. Otherwise, it was your expenditure management. A lot of these departments went through and said, can we do what we're doing in a more efficient and better way? So they looked for any operational expenditures that they could eliminate. We looked at some of our contracts that we have out there, especially when it comes to IT. IT is a huge expense for us. All the software it continues to be a large driver in every budget out there. Our IT department went back and looked at those and scrubbed to see which ones were being either not used or underutilized. They also went back to some of those and said, hey, we need to see if we can renegotiate these for better prices. And they achieved some results in that. So great work by everyone who was a part of that portion of the efficiencies. So total results achieved $32.1 million in total savings. 12.4 of that was from the general fund, with 11.7 of that as recurring. 19.8 million in non-general fund, 15.4 million of that recurring savings. So we did set those recurring savings, that base, as a reduction of $27.1 million annually. So great work by the departments. These are in here for reference. You've seen these before, but just to show that all departments participated in this and to the degree that they participated. Another portion of our budget development this year was the outside agencies. We've had several discussions on this. I know Mayor, Council, when we were here, sitting here about a year ago, we talked about a plan to reduce outside agencies over a 5-year phase out by 20% per year. We have gone in a little bit different direction on that, based upon the needs of the community and the needs of and the desire of this council to support some of the activities that are going on that really align with what we are doing, but that we as a city aren't doing. These outside agencies are supplementing for us. So looking at these more on a granular level, looking at the services that they provided. In this as well, Mayor, Council, you're going to see the awarded amount and the actual payments or the projected payments. This is to show that council, even though that we do award a certain amount, there are times when projects come through from these agencies that are in line with strategic objectives of this council and the city as a whole. So we will participate in some of those. So even though, like in fiscal year 24, we awarded in the general fund $3.3 million, our total payments to these outside agencies ended up being about $5 million. Total outside agencies down on the bottom line, 3.4, with about $5.2 million actually spent. Same thing with fiscal year '25, $3.3 million awarded out of general fund. It's looking like we will end the year at about 4.3, so still about $700,000 lower in fiscal year '25. In fiscal year '26, we did ask for a 20% reduction in, off the bat. Some of those fiscal year '26 outside agency requests came back right in line with where we were expecting to be, that $2.7 million mark. But some of those, if we could find a different funding source for those outside of the general fund to relieve some of the pressure on the general fund, you're going to see that we have moved some of those. So down at the bottom, the Creative Waco is eligible for hotel occupancy funds, and that's where we're going to fund $600,000. Historical Waco is also eligible for those funds, so $28,800 is going to come out of the hotel occupancy tax. Greater Waco Chamber will come out of WEDMEG, partially out of WEDMEG, $321,500 this year. We're Keep Waco Beautiful out of solid waste, so that will be $100,000. But overall, you can see where we are recommending support for these outside agencies out of the general fund at $3.2 million. I do want to call out one more item. There is in this year what we are creating as an outside agency project reserve fund. So a little bit of a change in the scope of what we're trying to do with outside agencies. Instead of funding it more administrative, we're looking at ways that we can support the projects as a whole. So specific projects that have a defined beginning and defined end to them, that's what we're looking at, setting up a special project fund for these types of projects. So we're going to initially seed that with $1 million out of the general fund, and we will have outside agencies apply for that.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, this is a pivot in direction here. And, you know, in all these conversations relative to outside agencies, I'm listening to your individual feedback as well as the feedback of the agencies and trying to craft a plan that's respectful to the agencies as well as ensures delivery of important projects and activities by the agencies. So this $1 million for the first year, I'm proposing that actually only one agency can apply for these resources, and that's Prosper Waco. So that we can stand up an application process similar to what our community foundations do over time and allow for agencies on this list or perhaps agencies that are not on this list to approach us with ideas for projects. They'd be time limited and they'd be performance based. So, hey, we've got this idea. We want to impact a housing initiative for 2 years. We want you to help us stand it up and then give us 2 years of funding, and we'll go figure it out past then. That's the model, because I think one thing that all the agencies recognize and we recognize is that Waco, on a per capita basis, is benevolent to these agencies, and that's important as a city to fund our nonprofits. But we're funding at about 2x what our peer cities are. And so we need to pivot out of what I'll call operational support and pivot into project support. That's going to be good for the agencies long term, and it's frankly going to be good for our budget situation short term. So it is a pivot. Would love any feedback you have on if you feel like that direction is headed in alignment with what feedback y'all have for me, because I would intend over the years for that number to grow and our operational support to agencies to decline.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
So I think I hear what you're saying. In subsequent years, would you see this as being driven more by the city identifying needs and then sort of going to outside organizations, or outside organizations coming to and applying, or some combination thereof?
I would say that agencies, a few years ago, agencies were able to apply for resources, and it would go to pay for their staff and their rent and their existence. And there may be something in the application that says, hey, we're going to try and bring more events to your downtown, but the dollars were flowing in to pay for people, not projects. And over what that's resulted in some cases, limited cases, agencies being very dependent upon the dollars that we provide. And I don't think, I feel like I've heard that that's not healthy for those agencies long-term. They need to be gathering resources for their operational support, and we would like to fund projects over the long term so that our investments are able to, hey, we paid for a project to impact housing or health or whatever your priorities are. Because one thing that's happened over the years is we've had a very closed system. The group that's on this page is all we've been able to support. And I think we have in the neighborhood of like 400 nonprofits in Waco, or in McLennan County. And this is the group that our dollars have been able to support. And I know there's other agencies that want to ask us for project support. But in the system we're operating within, when we're giving dollars to pay for salaries and rent or all these fundamental things that keep an agency going, it has created a closed system. And it's created one that's funding primarily the operation or sustaining of an agency rather than projects and activities.
Yeah, I'll just comment on this one too. I want to commend staff for pivoting into this sort of solution as we see it here in 2025. And I know that as I look at it, we have a $650 million budget. This is like $3 million, and I think we spend probably 90% of our angst on outside agency funding. You know, it's so I want to make sure we spend the proper amount of time on it because there's so many applicants and so many worthy applicants. We're always put in the position of picking winners and losers, and so to me the goal was to at least get this back to where peer cities kind of are because we were kind of maybe overextending ourselves. So I think that direction is still consistent with what we're doing here, as well as just helping keeping, I do believe that it does make sense for the taxpayers in the city as a whole to support some of these very basic entities. And again, picking and choosing is very hard, but I also like the idea of creating this kind of project fund where we can, kind of gear it to, if you have a specific project that needs funding, we'll have a pool there for you. And some of it could very well come from these on this list or people that aren't on this list. So this one's always a hard one and a tough one, but again, it's a tiny part of the deal, but I think we're landing in kind of a space that, you're right, City Manager Ford, I think I've heard from constituents, I think all of our council members probably have as well, and you've kind of landed in a place here where just shifting direction a little bit, which I think makes sense.
I just have a probing question, a wondering question. So what metrics are being used to evaluate the impact and effectiveness of these funds allocated to these agencies? In other words, what value are they bringing to the city of Waco?
So each year in their application process, the agencies propose performance metrics. In some cases, and you'll recognize this because of your day job, they're outputs. So like measuring how many business retention visits perhaps an agency did, rather than outcomes, which are how did we change the nature of Waco to benefit whatever aim the agency has. And so they do document those throughout the year, but I think there's an opportunity for growth to move from outputs to outcomes. And I think the focus on projects instead of the base operations will be helpful in that regard. Be happy to do a work session or either in council or budget and audit to more further describe what each agency tracks. I think that would be illustrative of the opportunity that exists to be more methodical towards outcomes.
Thank you.
Do we, council, would it be okay if we took like a 5-minute recess? I need to, that gives y'all a chance to freshen up, but we need to strategize on the remainder of the work session and make sure we're making good use of your time. If it's all right, we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute recess at
4:51 PM.
4:51 PM. 5 minutes, be back at 4:56. Reconvene at 5 o'clock, and we are going to call an audible here on the temporarily suspending the fascinating budget discussion that we're having, which I really enjoy, sincerely enjoy. But we're going to move to the next item, which is work session 2025-487. And City Manager Ford, or maybe give us enlightenment or direction here.
Yeah, for 47, I'd invite our guests to go ahead and have a seat. I'm going to have Deputy City Manager Emerson intro this because she's been running point for our office.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As they are getting seated, one of the things I'd like to highlight, as you heard a little bit during the budget presentation, that we have been exploring options on how to work more efficiently and effectively. One of the things you saw in the last budget process in FY 24-25, we looked at the privatization of the convention center. And so this discussion that you'll hear from Brendan Wiley, our director of the zoo, Zachary Winfield of Canopy Strategic Partners, and Christy Webb, the society director. You'll hear them talk about, we have started the process of looking at what a change in governance at the Cameron Park Zoo would look like. And so I'll turn it over to them and they can walk you through the details. But I just want to remind you that this is the first step or the first part of a multi-step process. And so just making sure you and the listening public are aware that there hasn't been a decision made, but this is some part of our exploration process.
Thank you.
Deputy Manager Emerson, thank you for that introduction. Manager Ford, Mayor, council members, we hope you're ready for a giraffe-tastic presentation. And get ready for Thursday, big day, Thursday. But tonight, we are here to talk about, actually, can you click down? Thank you. We're here to present the findings from the first phase of a governance study of the Cameron Park Zoo. This is a joint study funded both by the City of Waco and the Cameron Park Zoological and Botanical Society. It's just some contextual background. This was first identified as need in the contract between the city and the society dated April 18th, 2023. Fall last year on October 1st, this governing body approved a contract to engage Canopy Strategic Partners to really help us understand this. So just want to quickly kind of go back to the question of what is this thing? So we typically use 3 terms: public-private partnership, privatization study, governance study. They all basically refer to the same thing. In the end, and there's a beautifully written, I think so, because I wrote it, definition of what we're talking about here at the bottom. The nuts and bolts is what we're really evaluating is should the governance of the Cameron Park Zoo shift from a body of elected officials to a nonprofit board of directors. And if you've been around for a while, whatever your understanding of how this zoo has operated in the past, what we're talking about is something potentially different for the future. So is it common? That's a question that we get a lot. The short answer is yes. There's some quick stats on this slide. There's roughly 246 AZA accredited members. We only evaluated governance styles of the 225 that operate within the United States. Only 22 zoos are still municipally owned and operated. And if you look at Texas, of the 17 AZA member zoos and aquariums, there are only 2 that are municipally operated. That's the Cameron Park Zoo here in Waco and the Abilene Zoological Park in Abilene. The most common style of governance is nonprofit. So then we get to that question of why do zoos do that? Go ahead. And typically it relates one way or another to funding, because funding is so tied to performance and effectiveness. Whenever this question comes up, usually funding is somehow related. And Zach will get to that in the last bullet of his presentation. So, like Deputy City Manager Emerson mentioned, this topic really represents a journey, and we are just at the first part of that journey. Step one was April 18th, 2023, when the city and society said, let's evaluate how to operate the zoo in the best way possible. Tonight, we're wrapping up step two. Some of the other steps we know information about. We have all the data for step three. But tonight, we're just focused on step two. So with that, I would like to introduce, again, Zach Winfield, Senior Vice President of Canopy Strategic Partners, who is going to share the findings of this first round of evaluation.
Thank you, Brendan. Mayor and Council, thank you for having me down here to speak with you. My name is Zachary Winfield. I'm Senior Vice President at Canopy Strategic Partners. We are based out of Philadelphia. Canopy is a consultancy serving primarily zoos, aquariums, botanical gardens, and other sorts of odds and ends organizations that also have living collections. We've been engaged about 200 times by organizations across the United States and around the world. I personally have worked with somewhere around 120 different zoos, including most of the zoos here in Texas, and I do love coming to Texas because it means I get to wear my cowboy boots to a business meeting, so thank you for that privilege. But today, I'm here to share our assessment and recommendation pursuant to the topic of the governance of Cameron Park Zoo. First thing I want to do is just talk you very quickly at a 30,000-foot level through our process, and just to simplify it down to the bare brass tacks, it really took place in two phases. First phase was our discovery phase, when we asked the zoo and the society for a whole boatload of historical operating data, and that's financial data, attendance data, membership data, and all sorts of information from various corners of the operation. And what we did with that is we put together what we call a historical model, which in plain English is our attempt to reduce the extremely complicated operations of the zoo into a math problem. And what that does is it allows us to kind of uncover correlations between operating areas and really kind of create a qualitative and quantitative understanding of how the zoo earns and spends money. And then an outgrowth of that is an evaluation of what the opportunities are, what the key revenue levers are, and how the zoo can be continue to be a thriving zoo for the Waco community in the future. The second phase is our modeling phase, right, where we look towards two potential futures, really, a baseline future and a privatization future. And we create two projection models. The baseline projection model is meant to articulate what the financial operations of the zoo are likely to look like if it maintains the status quo, the current public governance structure. And then we compare that to a privatization model wherein we are assessing what the zoo's financial operations might look like under this new revised governance format. And like any model, there are a lot of assumptions under the hood, but I wanted to take you through a couple of the key ones. The first is that both of these models assume that a comprehensive master plan or a site plan takes place sometime in the next 12 to 24 months. Zoos earn money in a lot of different ways, but nothing is as important as how many guests can be driven through the gate. And like you were experiencing this year, you add penguins, you see a big jump in attendance. We've seen that play out over and over and over at all the zoos that we worked at. So it's critically important that there is a plan in place to continue to build on what is already an excellent zoo. Both models also include an assumption of about 30 new personnel being gradually added into the staffing model of the zoo. I know that sounds like a lot of folks, but that is what's going to be necessary to maintain AZA accreditation and to just ensure that this zoo remains best in class and really at the top of its game for the community here. Both models also assume roughly a $3 million annual operating subsidy from the city, What a lot of people don't know about zoos is that they're tremendously difficult businesses, right? It's really hard to turn a profit operating a zoo. And of the 200 and some odd zoos in the US and AZA, somewhere around 95% of them receive some version of a public subsidy, either a direct budgetary allocation, sometimes a tax millage or property millage. This is all to say that it's very difficult to make ends meet without that public support. So both of these models assume that some version of that support continues on. Fourth assumption, this is less of an assumption and more of just of a detail, but both of these models are operating models. We're just thinking about the basic blocking and tackling of what it takes to staff the zoo, the care and feeding of the animals and the guests, and all that sort of day-to-day stuff. These are not capital models. There's no indication towards kind of deferred maintenance or infrastructure issues right now. Like Brendan mentioned, those are important considerations and they are under evaluation, but right now we're just looking at operations. So those four previous assumptions, I talked about how the models were the same. This last assumption sort of defines how they are different, and this is very important. In the privatization model, personnel compensation is modified to mimic kind of what we typically see at other best-in-class AZA institutions, specifically privatized ones, whereas the baseline model shows the continued status quo of the personnel model and all the things that are downstream of that, benefits, payroll taxes, et cetera. So I want to take you through the highest possible level findings of what we see as the most likely future under these two scenarios. First, we're going to look at the baseline model. We're looking at a hypothetical privatization year of 2028. In the baseline model, of course, this assumes that the zoo does not privatize, but between 2028 and fiscal year 2035, our best assessment is that the zoo is likely to run a deficit of about $2.3 million across that time period in the baseline model.
So just to be clear, baseline is continue the governance structure and not necessarily the operations, but keep the governance structure we have now.
Yes, sir.
What would that look like financially projected out 10 years?
Correct.
Is that right? Okay.
Under the conditions of the assumptions that I sort of defined before, right? There's a master plan in there, there's still city support, but otherwise everything else kind of stays as it is today.
And the recommendation that's built in too is that 30 plus full-time employees would be needed to be added, whether privatized or kept current governance structure.
I don't believe they're all full-time, but I think most of them are. Maybe it is 30 FTE. Yeah, either way, the zoo is going to
30
need
new
that staff.
people would have to
30 new
be
bodies, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you for sure.
I'm going to add one more question. The 3 million then is baked into each one of these, the subsidies baked into the revenues?
Yes,
here?
sir.
Okay. So when it says that first year, or 2028 is almost 10 million, it's really 7 million plus 3 million.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Got it.
And this may be something you're going to touch on, but what's the rationale? You could continue on the same model, but implement best practices with the best operated zoos.
I am going to touch on that later, and you absolutely could, but it becomes perhaps prohibitively expensive, or at least it does put a challenging financial burden, especially on the personnel model. So the second model, the revised PPP model, this is the privatization model under all those same assumptions, but with the privatized model in place, we assess that the zoo is most likely to turn a surplus of about $2.5 million. So that's a $2.3 million deficit versus approximately $5 million surplus. So it's a bogey of about $5 million between the two models. Just to drill down a little bit and go a little bit further under the hood, dive into some of the key considerations that are underlying this. You know, I mentioned the importance of pursuing a master plan. I want to just mention it one more time in sort of a different way. You know, I talked about how important it is for a successful zoological entity to drive gate. It's our assessment that this zoo, in its current sort of financial and operating architecture, will really start to thrive at somewhere around 400 to 450,000 visitors. And so you say, okay, how do we get there from where we are today, right? Today, you know, last year we were at 330,000. This year maybe we're at 360, 380,000 visitors. How do you get to 400, 450,000 visitors? And the answer is that you build cool stuff. And that is essentially what we're recommending in terms of pursuing a master plan, is putting together a site plan that identifies over the next 10, 15, 20 years, what are the improvements that are going to be made to the zoo to continue to drive that gate, because we believe that the market can absolutely support visitation at this level, particularly when you take into account the population growth that's happening here. So here on the slide, what we're showing is a hypothetical version of a master plan, the blue bars, against a hypothetical where no master plan is put into place and no improvements, no significant capital improvements are made in the zoo. And what we see over and over and over in zoos that don't invest in their experience is that attendance will stagnate for a while and then eventually start to decline. So if we take one thing away from this discussion, I hope it's that it's the importance of investing in the guest experience and really committing to doing that master plan. Second thing is just getting a little bit more into the details on the personnel model, right? People think the zoo business is an animal business, but it's actually not. It's a people business. Usually most zoos, about 55 to 65% of the total expenses is spent on personnel. And so changes in personnel model have a really big impact on the bottom line. The baseline model, again, assumes that the current cost structure, compensation and benefits and fringe are kept in place, whereas in the private model, we're bringing those compensation and benefits packages into line with the other sort of high-performing zoos around AZA. The upshot of this is that we assess personnel at the zoo through the modeling period under the current public model is likely to incur costs of about $61 million over that 8-year period versus about $57.5 million under the privatization model, so a total cost savings of approximately $3.4 million. So just thinking back to like the delta between the public model and the private model of about $5 million, close to 3.5 of that savings is going to be found in personnel.
Is that because private employees are less costly than public employees in terms of what municipalities pay?
Yeah, the
versus
benefit
what
structure in public organizations it far exceeds what is typical at privatized AZA zoos, which is not to say that compensation all in gets worse, it just gets different, right? There are a lot of people in this model who have their salary increased to match AZA standards. I think when we look at kind of the personnel model here at the zoo today and think about it in the context of the city benefit system, right? You look at your animal sciences team, your animal care team, the average length of tenure of people on that team is somewhere around 3 to 3.5 years, something like that. So they're not, the benefits may not speak to them. Those generous retirement benefits are not having the intended effect potentially of keeping people in place. And that's something that's kind of particular to the zoo world, right? A lot of animal care staff, zookeepers, animal science people, kind of like baseball players, they like to move around from team to team, and I know Brendan has experienced that here. It's common to a lot of zoos, so there's nothing unusual about that.
So is the compensation and benefit structure, that's primarily the $3.4 million difference? I mean, it's not like number of personnel or...
No, because in the interest of being apples to apples between models, we kept the absolute number of FTE, exactly the same. Yeah. So what does this look like moving forward, right? This is kind of a binary decision, right? You either sort of privatize or you don't. We have seen some occurrences of things that are sort of in the middle, but if you elect not to privatize, we recommend in the strongest possible terms that it's still incredibly important that you pursue this master plan. We need to figure out what the future vision for the zoo looks like to make sure that it is vibrant and thriving and growing and interesting to the community and families here in Waco. If the privatization is pursued, there's sort of a set of next steps that you might look at in phase 2 and beyond. The first is to have just like a really good faith, open, transparent conversation between the city and the society about what everybody wants to come out of this, what their priorities are, and hopefully everybody agrees that the ultimate goal for this process is to have the best possible Cameron Park Zoo for the Waco community. Next is getting a little bit further under the hood to find what we call kind of hidden costs, right? If you really want to know what it costs to operate the zoo, you can't just look at its budget. There are lots of expenses that are part of that operation that don't fall within the zoo budget, right? There's HR services and administrative services and legal and snow plowing at some other zoos. I know that's not a big cost here. And I believe that we've surfaced probably all of those costs in this process, but it's really important to make sure that we fully understand as detailed a view as possible what some of those hidden costs are so that both parties can really have eyes wide open on what truly it costs to operate the zoo. And then as you move towards sort of figuring out what this agreement will ultimately look like, there needs to be a conversation about that management fee, right? Does it stay at a $3 million level? Is it modified in the future? Does it stay flat? A lot of times, the incentive for the public entity is to flatten out their obligations over the long term so they know that it's going to stay fixed. And the onus for managing the growth of the zoo falls on the private entity. Ultimately, the kind of last step in the process, which is a few steps ahead of where we are today, is to really formalize and codify that agreement between the two parties, the city and the nonprofit entity, the society, will ultimately be taking over operations of the zoo. So our recommendations, I'll leave you with this. This first one is something that I haven't talked about here today, but it did come up in our evaluation of the zoo. I know that the zoo is evaluating outsourcing the food and retail services to a third-party vendor, which is extremely common within the industry, and we recommend that you continue to pursue that evaluation. It's our assessment that from a financial basis, it's likely to benefit the zoo on the order of a few $100,000, so kind of a modest improvement in the zoo's favor. But there is sort of a qualitative, sort of softer benefit to outsourcing those operations, which is that all this administrative and personnel oversight, which is currently articulated towards managing, a restaurant and a retail service, which are not typically in the core competency of a zoological organization, are now freed up for other more pressing needs. Second is the thing about the master plan. Just want to nail that home one last time. We really need to start planning for improvements to the site today. Master planning is a long process, typically 9, 12, 14 months in some cases. But it is critical to put that plan into place and start thinking about what the zoo of tomorrow looks like. Lastly is our recommendation, which is that we firmly believe it is in the best interest of the zoo to pursue this privatization. Like Brendan mentioned, there is a very small and ever-diminishing group of zoos that are still municipally operated around AZA. Every year, 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 zoos move from municipal operations to private oversight. And that is, I think, because the market wisdom has basically spoken, and that private entities are much more able to support the growing and complex needs of a world-class zoo. So that concludes my comments, and I know if there are any questions, Brendan and I or Christy would be pleased to answer them.
Any questions for Brendan or Zach? I think you've given us some food for thought here, and I appreciate the presentation. You guys are very experienced, obviously, in looking at all the different zoo models, privatized and not privatized, and so I appreciate you bringing some organization to our thoughts around this. I also want to thank, I see Nancy Lacey and Krista Brinzer and some of you guys back there with the Zoological Society. Really appreciate the partnership that the city has with the society and some of the great things that have been happening there and the nice trends that are going on there right now. So great relationship. We want to keep that going. And so Brendan, thank you for getting this put together. And I think, Bradley, we're on to the next item.
Mayor, can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
My wife's from Corpus Christi. We go down there. I used to go to the Texas State Aquarium a lot. I always assumed that was government-run. Is that actually a nonprofit that runs under that name? Do either of you know?
That is correct. It is a nonprofit that operates it.
Okay.
It does receive, let me rephrase that, it has received in the past state funding, but it is operated as a nonprofit.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate the presentation.
We will now move back. Thanks again, guys. We will now move back to work session 2025-486. Bradley. We were on page 34, I think.
Back to your previously scheduled program. If you're a regular observer of our meetings, we are working outside of the norm here. Mayor, I would like to suggest we let Blue present until 5:50, at which time we'll break in advance of our business session. And anything we don't cover in the balance of the slides, I'll bring back on August 19th for further discussion on the budget. With that, I'll turn it over to Blue.
Thank you, City Manager. Diving back into employee compensation, again, on the civil service compensation, we are honoring our 3rd year of the agreements that we have with Meet and Confer and collective bargaining. So the fire department overall is 7% increase in fiscal year 26, bringing their 3-year total to a 29.4% increase. Police department up 9.2%. in fiscal year '26 for 23.4% total increase over 3 years. Combined, that's a 26.4% increase for civil service over the last 3 years. On the non-civil service side, again, we are talking about a 3.5% increase, general service increase for fiscal year '26, bringing that 3-year same total up to 11.9%. Employee health insurance, another big portion of our spending for fiscal year '26. Again, that 14% increase in the city's contribution, 6% on the employee side. What that amounts to on the employer contribution per full-time employee, up to $11,023 per employee, up from $9,434 in fiscal year '25. You can see the tiers below for in the employee portion. So that's what that 6% is going to be between the different tiers. Again, that 6% increase going from $2.24 per month for an employee only up to $32.84 increase for employee plus family.
So as I recall from either our budget retreat or maybe a previous meeting, we are still a little bit light in funding our potential liabilities. Does this increase do anything towards that, or are we just still treading water?
This increase is getting after that liability. So
Sorry.
that is, this increase that we're talking about is getting after the liabilities that we have. So we are funding what we anticipate we will owe.
I think it will be something we chase for a couple of years, though, Councilmember. But we're starting this year in the right direction.
Our Mayor Council always looking at the employees and what that 6% is going to do. So we look at the lowest pay grade that we have is $16.99.5 per hour with that 3.5% GSI. That's a total annual increase just over $1,200. The employee-only side with that 6% increase, out of that $1,237 increase on the annual side, after health insurance increase, the employee only with the wellness would net $1,210 of that $1,237. On the employee plus family, that net pay goes down to $843 on the year. Looking at TMRS, another big topic that we have, another big expense for the city as a whole. This proposed budget maintains our current retirement benefit structure. That's the 30% repeating non-retroactive COLA that was adopted in 2023, effective for the calendar year 2024. The employee contributions under this rate plan are going to total $9 million. That's a 7% contribution. On the city side, the contributions are going to be $23.3 million. Now, if you think about that level of expense that we have on the city's contribution, that's going to be more than our street maintenance cash funding, which is $17.9 million. It's going to be more than our employee health insurance, which is $19.1 million. And that $23.3 million is greater than the combined general fund administrative departments, which are city manager, city council, city secretary, legal and finance, economic development, and more than cultural enrichment, along with that at $19.2 million. So quite a investment by the city into TMRS on the city's contribution. Our 2-to-1 employer match means that 2/3 of the retirees' monthly benefit payment comes from the city. So what we have is the current plan and the 5 options that TMRS has to enhance the COLA options for this year. Now, Mayor and Council, what we have is a required contribution of 18.13% from the city on this. So 7% from the employees, 18.13% from the city. That gives a total contribution of $32.3 million. Now, if you're looking at any of the options, the different options, you have 2 options, option 1 and 2, that go up to 50% COLA. One is going to be retroactive. One is going to be non-retroactive. You have options 3 and 4 that are the same with 70%, retroactive and non-retroactive. And you can see how the required contributions are changing based upon those. And that increase comes directly from the employer contribution, the city's contribution. So down in that blue line at the very bottom, that's the increase over that 23 million that is required by the city to make and to fund any one of those options that were provided by TMRS to enhance our COLA options for TMRS.
And one thing to keep in mind, council, a few years back, the legislature created an option for non-retroactive COLAs to be adopted. And in that bill, they said that any elections would have to be done by 2025. So if you look at option 2 and option 4, you'll notice that they're non-retroactive. They happen to also be a couple of the cheaper options. Those, after this budget year, will go away as options for you to consider. And barring any new legislation, you'll be left with options, like let's say we took this up in a future year. You'll be left with option 1, 3, or 5. I think Blue was going to cover that later, so I might have got ahead of him, but I think it's important for everybody to know. Option 2 and 4 are time limited to the next few weeks.
But the retroactive portion is limited by law, but the COLA percentage is totally up to us, is that correct?
Can you say that again? I couldn't hear that.
So what COLA percentage is chosen would be up to, that's not mandated by the legislature?
That's
Just
no,
the
that's by
non-retroactive.
TMRS. You can have 30, 50, or 70.
I got you, okay.
All right, a little bit about how those contribution rates are determined. And there's two, and it's going to be a little bit in the weeds, but I'll try to hit it at a high level and take any questions that you have. Really on the asset side, there's only two ways of putting money into this fund. Really, you've got your contributions flowing in, that's from your employees and your city contributions, and then you have investment earnings. So a lot of times we'll say, or hear this notion that investment earnings pay for the COLAs that are being given, and I will explain that that's not exactly true, especially in Waco's case. So on the investment earnings, anytime you have earnings of, say, $10 million in 1 year, you do not get to take credit for that full $10 million in any given year. They smooth those earnings out. They also smooth out losses over 5 years. So out of that $10 million gain or loss, you only get to take credit or take the opposite of the credit of $2 million per year over those 5 years. So just a little bit of way that they keep the rates stable rather than having large swings. On the opposite side of that balance sheet, you have your liabilities. So the current retirees, everything that's already been earned has to be paid out over the life of the retiree. That's factored into our liabilities. Then you have actually the future benefit accruals. So active employees, as you work through your years, you're accruing more and more benefits that go into the liability side of this. Now, in a perfect world, your assets are going to 100% match your liabilities. That's a fully funded plan. In most cases, especially when you have defined benefit, defined contribution hybrid plans like TMRS, you're going to have an unfunded actuarial liability, that UAAL. That is when your assets are less than your liabilities. Your liabilities exceed. In that case, what you have is an additional rate on top of your normal rate, which is called your prior service cost rate, PSCR. That liability that you're going to have is amortized over 20 years to get to that prior service cost rate. So let's look a little bit more at that prior service cost rate. Factors that increase make the city contribution higher on the PSCR. Investments that are below assumptions. So if our investment earnings are less than what TMRS is shooting for, that's going to increase our prior service cost rate. Any experienced losses. So employees retiring earlier than projected, retirees living longer than predicted. There's all these mortality tables that tell the actuaries how to calculate these rates over the life of a retiree. So anytime those assumptions change, you're going to have the experienced loss, or on the opposite side, the experienced gain. Any plan benefit enhancements, COLA increases, that's exactly where this goes into. the enhanced early retirement provisions, any retroactive benefit improvements that are going to increase the liabilities that have already been accrued, those will all increase your prior service cost rate. On the factors that reduce your prior service cost rates, when your investments come in higher than assumptions, again, those experience gains, and if the city were to be able to make extra contributions, that would all pay down on that prior service cost rate, that would eventually drive down our total contribution rate. But here we are, Mayor, Council, on our Texas Municipal Retirement System, the WACO plan. We are funded right now at 84.5%. That means that we have that unfunded liability. Our actual liabilities are $710 billion against assets of 710 million against assets of 600 million. So we have that $110 million gap that's smoothed out over 20 years to try to get to that 100% funding rate. There's always a retiree impact on this. So we have taken the information from TMRS and we've broken this down. So at the top, you're going to see those options and how much the city is going to be contributing to any of those enhanced options than what we have and what we're offering today. In the lower half of that screen is your retirees, your current retirees broken down in quartiles. So you can see the average benefit payments for each quartile. So if you look at that middle chart, that first quartile, the original average monthly benefit that retiree was receiving was $323.85. In today's 2025 benefit dollars, that has increased to $354.74. And then if you go through each one of the plans, the 30%, 50%, or 70%, you can see how the adoption of one of those is going to change that average monthly payout. And the bottom just shows you versus the current 2025 benefit, if we were to move to that 50% retro, option 1, 2, 3, or 4, how much of an increase. So you can see where the retroactive option 1 on 50% increases by about 12% across the board, almost 13%. Option 3 is a retroactive at 70%. That's going to increase our retirees monthly by about 20 to 21%. But again, those are the most costly to the city because, as we talked about, the only way to fund a plan is through those three levers: employee contributions, which you can't change. We cannot create new investment earnings, so the only place to get those dollars to make up for these new liabilities is through the city contributions. Want to also look at our comparable cities and what those plans are doing. So our 10 cities plus Waco are listed at the top. You can see Abilene is the only one that provides no COLA option. They have never opted into that, so they have that 0% COLA option. Amarillo.
Do you mind if I say something there?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's also 94% funded and a contribution rate at 10%. Those all relate to one another, right? The least COLA is going to create the most plan health. The most COLA is going to create the most difficulty for funded ratios and contribution rates. Go ahead.
Thank you. So out of the 10 comparable cities that we have, the 10 that we comp to, only 2 have changed their plans since this new law came into effect, and that's Amarillo and College Station. Amarillo elected first into the 30% non-retroactive for 2024, and in 2025, they elected into 50. And I will say their plan right now is to try to go to 70% non-retroactive for 2026, but that has not been made official. College Station is at 70% non-retro. They moved to that last year. But the rest of those cities, most of them you'll see are at 70% retroactive. But these are legacy plans that have been in place for many, many years. So they have been paying this amount for several years to be able to build into those prior service cost rates that the 70% retroactive COLAs have accrued. So those plans have had a lot more time to react, which is why you're going to see a little bit better funding ratio and a little bit less or the same contribution rate as the City of Waco right now with our 30% non-retroactive that was adopted for the 2024 year. And then again, from TMRS, those WACO options 1 through 4, whether we go 50%, 70% retroactive, non-retroactive, that's how our fund ratio and our current contribution rate would change based upon any plan change that we have from council.
And if we keep our current 30% non-retroactive, that is also an option, is that right?
That is an option. You can always keep exactly what you have today.
Okay. And these are just
You can
exploring if
keep-
we wanted to change what we did in 2024, is that,
Yeah, if you wanted to,
or is staff recommending we change the plan?
not
We're not
recommending.
recommending, we have in the budget right now, just the 30%. The current plan that we have is what we've carried forward into this. But again, if that's the will of the council, we can look at options to provide you to be able to make up for those differences that we saw. So if you wanted to elect in one of those, we would be finding somewhere between $3 to almost $11 million out of the general fund to be able to pay for these options.
That's one thing I asked Blue to do some, because a lot of these numbers, obviously, Blue's corresponding directly with TMRS, and they're providing the estimates and option values. One of the things I asked them to do, though, is, particularly on our side, is look at which fund would be required to pay that extra dollars in those blue lines. And not surprisingly, it's intuitive now that he's told me what it is, but 85% comes from the general fund, and that's because much of our salary load is sitting in our police and fire employees. And that's a good thing. I'm proud of the work we've done for our existing compensation for those public safety team members. But any change here will have an overweighted impact on the general fund. So we won't be able to go to water for it. We won't be able to go to other non-general funded. It will be 85% funded by general fund, which obviously has tax rate implications and broader complications, whether we continue with our street program and other matters. So appreciated Blue diving deep on that for me.
Sure.
Because at a minimum, option 2 would be $3 million more dollars that we would contribute, which would come directly out of other general fund priorities.
85% of the 3 would come out, whatever that math is, would
Okay.
come out of general fund. Yep. And it would have a corresponding, go back to your one more forward, sorry. Go forward to that. If you were inclined to do that one, you can set it, you see the funded ratio and contribution rates, dropping the funded ratios and increasing contribution rates as effective an action there.
All right, Mayor, Council, we have full detailed fund summaries for you. We've emailed those out to you. For time at this point, we're going to kind of skip through that portion of it, get to a little bit of our mitigation strategies that we were talking about in order to be able to approach this budget cycle. We're happy to answer any questions you have on any of those specific funds and what those budgets are, but we can also bring those back to you at a later council meeting. So again, on our reserve positions, there's going to be policy reserves, and think of that as your kind of your rainy day funds. That's the money we must keep in savings to meet both legal and financial obligations. That's based upon your future revenues that you're going to get. So if we're saying in the general fund we're going to have $210 million next year, we have to set aside 27.5% of that future dollar. The cash available for budget reallocation is our flexibility money. That's the cash that we have in hand right now that's above and beyond that reserve policy that we can put forward. It's not future dollars, it's dollars that we have right now in our hands. So again, these are not for temporary slowdowns in the economy later on that we need to kind of smooth things out with, our operations out with. These are like one-time capital project dollars. So right now, where we sit in the general fund and the major and minor enterprise funds, special revenue funds, you can see as you walk through the math, really what it comes down to is the last 2 columns, what we're planning to use already in the proposed budget, and then what we have after that proposed addition or use of reserves. So in the general fund right now, we have come down to about $2.8 million of extra funds available for reallocation. Water and wastewater have a little bit more at almost 20 million and 12.2 million, 12.3 million. Drainage at 700,000, airport at 581,000, and Cameron Park Zoo at almost 2 million. Public health coming in at 1.2, and street maintenance coming at $5.5 million. So that's where we sit as extra dollars above and beyond the policy reserves that we have.
Very quickly, those excess funds would be used within the utility. Can they cross?
They have to be used for whatever fund they are in, yes.
And Mayor and Council, kind of directionally speaking, I would like to explore that managed reserve percentage decreasing next year to 25. I think that's in alignment with good practices relative to our bond council and also our financial advisors. And so signaling to you, I'll probably come back with another 2.5% decrease next year. We can deliberate that at a budget audit, obviously, and talk through the reasons more in depth, but didn't want to let this opportunity pass up to mention that.
All right, going into our capital improvement project, the program as a whole, again, like we said, $134.2 million, really across the city just to enhance services, support long-term community growth, and address the infrastructure needs that we have out there. Again, all we want to do is position Waco to be in the best possible scenario for future economic growth and development, business growth and development. So big portion of this always is going to be about $51 million in transportation and infrastructure. So this is where all of your streets, Better Street Waco, your bridge reconstruction, bridge maintenance, some of your ADA compliance, all of that is going to be in this $51 million. Utility infrastructure, again, always looking at what we can do on the water and wastewater side, drainage side, to make sure that we are providing good, clean water to our residents, making sure our water system, wastewater system are reliable and available to use by our residents and our businesses. Public safety, we have pre-construction funding for Fire Station 8, facility planning for the police crime lab property room. That work is still continuing. That was the $1.5 million from fiscal year 25 that we put in. That work will continue on, and we expect an actual project budget to come in next fiscal year 27. And again, the quality of life, economic development, so the airport runway is a $12 million project, but that is 95% grant funded, so we were only going to be responsible for the actual 5%. But that full 12 million has to show up in your budget. But again, we're only responsible for 5% of that. Downtown redevelopment, the prep work on that, about $7 million what we're planning. Cameron Park Zoo has $768 million for some of their Jaguar exhibit expansion. Cottonwood Creek, we got a lot of drainage issues that we've talked about, $2.9 million in that. And the Parks and Rec, just facility upgrades, about $15 million. And that's in fiscal year 28 through 29. So future planning for those. There are two projects that are not fully funded at this point, but I do want to make sure that we point out that are still continuing forward. That's the downtown Phase 1A and the reconstruction of the Joint Operations Center, the building where we are going to try to consolidate a lot of our field operations. We have come up with a plan that we will share later at a later meeting. But overall, we're working with financial advisors, bond counsel, and the AG's office to work on how we can actually fund these projects. So we're looking at some type of direct note program, getting that approved and authorized so that we can move forward with these projects, draw down on those notes, and then fix out the debt service at the end of construction period. Ultimately, that's going to save us quite a bit of money rather than just sitting on the dollars through the construction period and having to pay back principal and interest during that construction.
Mayor and Council, I think that's a great spot to pause for the evening, and we'll come back with funding packages on the 19th and the remaining slides as well. That way, you'll have a chance for a break before business session.
Okay, so with that, we will, that's it for the
Yeah, the only.
work session.
The only asterisk I'll put on that, Mayor, I think we have a change to the consent agenda. Is now the appropriate time, City Attorney, to address that?
Absolutely. Mayor, we're recommending that we read Resolution 2025-505 separately and pull that one out of the consent agenda for a slight amendment.
What is,
The amendment, we do have a motion, recommended motion.
Oh, okay. Like special language for that one?
Mayor, I'll get with you during the break and give you everything that you need.
not for this, I'll worry about that in the second session. Okay. Is there anything else, Bradley? No, sir. Okay. You have to say, I need to go to work session 490, council request for scheduling of future agenda items. Any requests for future agenda items? There being none, we will now recess the work session and reconvene the regular session for executive session as read into the record by the city secretary at 5, is that right? Did I hear something over there?
No, Mayor, that would be the normal process, but we're going to do executive session after the business session, so we would just
We're just
recess
taking
at this
we're just
time.
recessing for right now.
Yes, so recess at a certain time.
Okay, we're taking a recess here right now and at 5:51 PM.